Totally.
All right,
But,
I'm gonna sneeze.
yeah.
Sneeze successful.
Bless you.
By the way, before we start, I saw your post about Zionists.
About Israel. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually have had a lot of conversations about how Jesus actually cries about Israel at his time because they're not for the way of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the judgment on Israel, and that's why like around 70 AD, like it was a fulfillment of prophecy of why they got destroyed. And
Mm-hmm.
so here is coming from someone who's gone through a lot of the deconstruction on what we're raised in is a lot of times there's kind of like this been since the Nazi regime. The response then is let Israel have their land and then let's really support this empire so that atrocity never happens.
Right.
But then the reality is they're not another empire.
Yeah.
And so you got to live with that. Like any empire nuances, like United States of America is an empire. They do a lot of good things. There's a lot of things that is sad that the United States empire does. And I'll say it's the same thing with Israel, like especially when they're talking about like the Gaza settlers, like like not allowing them to collect even rainwater for their crops, only pretty much Israelites, nationalist Israelites can
Yeah.
collect like things like that, like gross, not the way of
The main
peace.
yeah. The main thing that like I didn't even say anything about Hamas or like on it, like even like the politics of the time.
Yeah,
Like right now, like I'm mainly the main point, and it probably wasn't conveyed very well. But the thing is, I have like multiple thoughts about what I did and how I did it.
uh-huh,
But it's like for a reason.
yeah,
But basically, um, it's just to confront an ideology. I'm not talking about foreign policy, about how an American should view every aspect of like how Israel's gone about and like weighing what is Israel doing, what is Hamas doing, what is the people in Gaza doing, what, and it's like, are you able to look through like is the lens that you have that you're viewing through excusing things, and how far is too far?
yeah,
Like and so it's like it's just simply confronting someone's like ideologies and what they like, the black and white thinking that they have.
yeah,
And I just watching everybody's responses was really funny to me
yeah,
because it tells me more about them than anything else, because they just want to hear themselves talk. They want to like share about their knowledge, and they immediately jump onto like, oh, is this like one of the guys like was like, oh, well, you didn't consider this nuance or that nuance, and another guy was like, okay, well, like, what about this scenario? I'm like, you guys are completely missing the point.
yeah,
Like, that's not. I'm not asking. I'm not like. I'm not. First of all, then the other aspect of it is like, I'm not an apologist.
yeah,
I'm not here to argue a perfect point. I am a human being. If I was a battleship and all we were battleships, just to blow holes in each other's armor,
yeah,
what is that? What is the point of this? Like, it's just a zero sum game at that point, and no one's anything at all. But like, are you a pliable human to let what's going on inform your decisions? Now, if you're saying that it isn't a genocide right now, then that's a difference of opinion. I would think you're wrong, but at the same time, like, yeah, you can believe whatever you want to believe, but like, if it becomes a genocide in your opinion, will it ever become a genocide? Like, is that even a possibility to you? And then, like, I didn't say this in the post, but like, ultimately, like, so many of these, like, especially the men that like railed against me, have never been able to like
I actually
been able to like admit fault.
so like for me,
Sorry.
like I saw your post And actually, I didn't even know there were comments. Like, I was just reading, like, you know what? I want to discuss to Peter in person.
Yeah.
I've lost. And if anything, if I would have hopped on, it probably would have been then just a response to everyone else. I didn't even know there were responses to you, which I'm not.
Oh no. I grew up. It's funny. I grew up with a bunch of people that love to argue, and
Yeah.
that's their whole thing is arguing. And it's just like it's like who can win an argument? It's
Yeah.
like that's all it is.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where also the other aspect that I didn't mention yet is that for me as a like growing up a people pleaser.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that
sorry.
I'm live streaming. Do you want me to mute this?
Oh no, it's fine.
When we start gaming, I start the live stream. I was like, oh shoot, I totally.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I consent to you live streaming.
Okay.
But
It's like everyone
as
around me always knows when I game, I live stream, and so
yeah, I'm aware of that.
yeah. Okay, but continue. Sorry, I'm tired,
Yeah,
and so my ADHD of I get a thought and boom, I say it, and so
No, it's okay.
I'm a lot more off the handle today than you have a very tired off the handle, Corey. Not a
No, that's okay. I don't need a Corey that's firing on all cylinders.
Okay.
Like who you
Well,
are
thank
is
you.
exactly who I get, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, now I really want to hear your point, and apologies for
yeah.
interruption.
No, you're good. The other aspect of it, besides all of that,
Yeah.
is just that as a people pleaser, and as someone who has so much anxiety about disappointing anyone,
Yeah.
it's exposure therapy. That's all it is. I'm disappointing people. I'm basically causing a ruckus in a way in a very safe way that like none of them are going to cause me physical harm.
Yeah.
Like it's just an online person who's has opinions behind their keyboard.
Yeah.
And so it's a safe way for me to just kind of in a way poke the bear
Yeah.
and then kind of get used to, it's like what I posted on Easter, Happy Easter, like the largest cause of like infant death in the world is Israel right now, or like up until this point in this year.
Mm.
I didn't fact check that. I didn't care to fact check that, because I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
And it's like someone's like, oh, like people are gonna freak out. It's like I know people who are constantly spouting stuff from QAnon.
Yeah.
Like if I repost something that's like or like people are constantly reposting like Russian propaganda.
Yeah.
Like
Like
I was
confirmation bias.
I can't possibly make a mistake in my life. It's like, okay, so what happens when I make a mistake? What
Yeah.
if someone like proves me wrong? Like how do I take that?
Yeah.
And it's like it's just another form of exposure therapy of being like I don't have to be infallible to exist or have worth. But in communities I grew up with, I had like to have worth, I had to be infallible. I have to do things just right. I have to perform at a certain standard to really have worth. They wouldn't say that, but that's how they treat you.
Yeah. Well,
And so it's just that
yeah.
exposure therapy of like kind of desensitizing myself to people and all their shenanigans.
Yeah. And that's where yeah, and it's once it's like I'm here with you, friend. Like just having that experience of like and now feel like everyone you grew up with, you're having a conscious state and you feel like you have to say something instead of going along with the crowd. Like
Yeah.
I get that.
What's like if I don't keep up on current events or if I don't oh, you didn't hear the latest or whatever, like, oh, you're misinformed. Oh, you don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, I think it totally dismisses like the human element of like, hey, there's a lot of news happening right now, and you're probably overwhelmed, and you're across the world, and that sucks.
Yeah.
And it's like if your response is to just dig deeper into like your belief systems or like stubbornness.
Yeah.
I would say stubbornness rather than belief systems, but like just basically closing yourself off to it and not leading into like, hey, yeah, this is actually really hard for everyone. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like kind of appealing to people's like humanness, but then you just have people who are like just digging in harder,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's
which is completely dismissive of like who you are as a human.
yeah. And that's why like so I think unless you have have had a conscience change, that's why like unless you have a conscience change about how King Jesus ruling and reigning in one's life and in your life, that's why as someone who still clings to Jesus but now is on this side of the fence,
Mhm.
seeing it as, and that's why like I first want to affirm, like usually there's, for a very hyper Zionist viewpoint, it comes with the history of the Nazi regime. And so it wasn't until I was in community and with a place where I could receive information of the other reality, because you know how it is when you receive information that goes against your views,
Yeah.
instant pain receptors go off.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Totally. That's a really great way of saying it.
And so the thing is like the reason why we're in such these confirmation bubbles is because we're actually like one of the most pleasure seeking cultures ever. Like we just don't know, we don't say it out loud. And it even comes from like the the algorithm system that goes into our community. And so now like you have fallen into the algorithm. I imagine when you're scrolling TikTok, you're seeing the terrible loss of life.
Oh yeah.
And the reality is someone else doesn't get that because they haven't
Right.
explored that reality. Usually they're, and so like the reason, yeah, and that's why like I, as someone who clings to Jesus, I start with the reality of even Jesus condemned the like the wanting to have military answers for like humanity struggles.
Hmm.
And so, and that's like the Israel nation is now and is an empire. And so there are things like they will have to do for national security, and then but then there's times where I'll say that they're denying life because we're all like, I actually been really thinking about political theology a lot lately because I'm working on some material to respond to some family.
Hmm.
And then when I, for as a someone who clings to Jesus, from the very beginning of Genesis to the very end of Revelation is Eden. Is the cosmic city mountain Eden where resources are shared, weapons are turned into plowshares. It's literally a
Yeah.
garden city. Like
Hmm.
and actually following Jesus, we're always, our goal is to make that future reality now. That's why, like in the book of Acts, you see them instantly, like you see people selling property, making a distribution to the poor, to the widow, and then like they're living as if the future reality is now. And even though a lot of tension, like a lot of like stuff, like bad stuff happened because of that, like the fact that they so like I'm about to like go and squirm on, but I need to stick to my idea. The reality is we're trying to live the Eden reality now.
Yeah.
Now, when we deal with nations and national security, every like any response is actually, any national security response is, it's having to respond to the evil now, but is not the ideal. Like you see,
Yes, of course.
and so you see that with laws, like especially in the First Testament, the Old Testament. I mean, you can actually even see in the Tanakh, like the laws actually like being against the practice, but creating a system so that it brings the ancient Israelites to where it's not being practiced. Um, like for instance, like during war times, if let's say you and I just destroyed. Let's just think of a near city. Let's say Sandy. We or actually no, that's too. Let's say Damascus. We just had a war with the city of Damascus, and the men just died. And it says it's like if you see a lady, and this is the really cool part, it is if you see a lady that is pleasing to the eyes, and you took her. Like, and already you see the author going all the way to the Garden of Eden of pleasing to the eyes and taking. So the author, the writer inspired by Yahweh, Jesus, like already saying this is not the Eden ideal, but it's having to work with the culture and the time and people, because the reality is moral reformation is generally, unless the Holy Spirit is moving, it's a generational thing that has to happen. And do you get where I'm leaning is? So now back to like that is like lost. That idea is actually that idea is lost, especially with how Christianity now is so liberal or conservative. We're so close to our political ideology that then we say this political ideology, they are then doing the Christian thing. But it's actually like, no, the reality is the reality should be always be the Eden. The future is now. And any response, it won't be the ideal, but that is always our goal. Always the goal. How do we share our resources? How do we live life where we could be vulnerable with our neighbors? Like there's that. So yeah, you're gonna say something?
Oh yeah, I mean, I track with you, like on all that. The funny thing to me is that people have nothing to lose here in the United States by condemning like killings of innocent people, no matter what the context.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because, I would say strictly because of religious affiliation, people have a bias towards Israel to just let them do things that you would not let other nations do.
And
it's just strictly a I think it's like an internal moral compass situation, and how you perceive what you believe.
Yeah.
And your ability to take outside information and then integrate it into like what's going on with you, and like actually let you inform your decision, or how, I guess, like what happens when you are confronted with information that is different than like who brought this?
Yeah.
John.
What?
They don't like cranberries.
Okay. Sorry, their neighbors brought cookies over for us. That was really sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like I think I'm more interested in what people do when confronted with information that is contrary to what they've practiced, and then potentially it's so egregious that it should be like really safe for them, like a no-brainer situation.
Yeah.
But then they choose to dig their heels in because they've never practiced what it means to admit being wrong about something, or having to say, you know what, I was like, I don't believe that anymore, or letting who you are be pliable to whatever. Because like you can say like, but even some people were like, oh, I don't believe that Israel's perfect, while they're making excuses for Israel's doing right now, because I look at the Bible and see that they weren't perfect in the past and God condemned their actions and stuff like that. I'm like, is there anything that they've done that you believe is wrong right now?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that you could find that they're wrong, but like they're defending them to the nail when they have no dog in the fight. Like,
yeah.
And when you don't have any dog in the fight, when it really comes down to it, to things that like really matter, and you're faced to make a decision that might be contrary to what you've previously practiced,
Yeah.
you're not gonna be pliable. You're
Yeah.
not going to be a reasonable human.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean? Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. And I will, yeah, I think the hard part is we are like society, like we think that we are, because of, we glorified Aristotle and we glorified free thinking. We like I think like we think that we're a lot more pliable than we are. And I
Yes.
think that's the hard part, is coming to terms that the reality is we're not, and our culture does not actually enforce that. Like we think we're like we think we are like here's this egregious evil, please, like even though you're having a hard time wrestling out the moral ramifications of war, and like the reality is it's just evil across, and like just being sad that lives are being, like children, school, like
Yeah.
lives are just gone.
Yeah.
Like just be sad. Like you don't have to have
Yeah.
a response. Just like mourn. Like bless he who like that's what the Beatitudes are all about. Like let's be people. Let's be the teachers, the hospitals, the doctors. Let's just speak
Yeah.
care. Let's um
I totally agree.
yeah. And so
I
like
like
and so we're just very far, like since we have gotten so close to, like I don't know how, like nationalism is very close, like we just don't know like how much nationalism is close to um a lot of our thinking and practices, because like usually when reading the Bible, there's a kind of a lens. Like when I read the Bible, like when I was growing up, I read it with the lens of my community and people. And so the
mhm.
moment I came up with someone who read the Bible differently and saw things, it just takes a lot of work to say, wow, that's different. And
Yeah.
then to entertain it. And I think the entertaining part is the moment that you entertain that something might possibly be right. There is then fear of there's
I think fear of being wrong.
I think it's wrong. I mean, fear of I guess really our lives, we put rocks, like we make these stories our private stories, right? Like that's
Mhm.
one thing that's beautiful about scripture, is that it teaches through story. So we all make our private stories. Like the moment, like when I wake up, like even like the moment, either when I screw up or have a glorifying moment, it reinforces, I'll say, a private narrative I'm having in my mind. It reinforces. So
Right.
the moment that I hear information that goes against my private narrative, I have to. It takes a lot of work to be flexible and saying like I want to and change. Like I have to now work this out with my internal story. Like back when I used to think that the way to do leadership as a Christian is reading a bunch of John Maxwell books and a lot of leadership, how to win friends and influence people, and I can then like
Mhm.
advance my God-given mission through influence.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
but I did that proclaiming Jesus, but not doing the practices that Jesus calls out to do. There be moments
Right.
that I have it, the moments but that
Yeah.
was, Jesus was not my focus and practice, because I didn't know how, like I didn't know this whole story thing, like, and how wisdom literature was, because I read it again with Western eyes, which Western
Right.
eyes, I'll say, what at least for me with Western eyes, I very much systematized it instead of like hearing the story, listening to the story, meditating on how the story impacts me, making this story then
Yeah.
my story, making Jesus' story my story.
Yeah.
Like that is actually a very Eastern
Daddy,
way of reading.
Daddy, need help. I'm in a boat. I got out of a boat and trying to get out of it.
You're trying to get out of your boat?
Yeah.
Ooh, that is hard
Try
sometimes. To
what?
get off
Hit
your boat.
spacebar? Hit spacebar a lot. See if that gets you out of the boat. Try control.
Where's control?
I forgot. I forgot the keys.
That's how you move the boat.
Oh, it's shift. Here, let's try this again. So we can do it right. Okay. Oh yeah, so you right click. Oh, okay. Left shift to dismantle. Dismount. So hit shift. There you go. I had to put my finger on the keyboard to remember how the heck you get out of
Dude.
boats.
Yeah, seriously, it's so funny. When she said it, I can't get out of this boat. I was like, I've been in that same, no pun intended, boat. I think one, like you're talking about like Jesus's practices and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think one huge thing that I think about that reinforces, I think, a lack of pliability is the constant like, oh, it's you and your relationship with God, like bow your head, close your eyes, everyone say this prayer with me, like very singular you and God situations.
Yeah.
Where like the go to your brother and talk to your brother about like how he has sinned against you. Like go like there's like those constant situations of you're called to live in a community like, and I think this is a big thing, is that like not doing everything perfectly
Yeah.
as to avoid all possibility of conflict.
Yeah.
That's not a standard that actually exists. That's not an actualizable standard. Like, but that's definitely how I was raised, where it's like, well, if you do A, B, and C, like like everything will work out perfectly, and that was the standard. When it wasn't like, oh no, when someone says something dumb to you, like, do you tell them that it hurt your feelings?
Yeah.
Like, yes, like go to them. Like, what are you holding anger at them? Like, hey, like talk to them. Like these, but that requires you to be vulnerable with people. And I'm not talking about like massive vulnerability with absolutely every person, because I think only certain people, you can only have the deepest level of vulnerability like in your life, and then as it kind of radiates out from there, you have then those different circles of friends, and so you can have those of which you can be very ultimately vulnerable with.
Yeah.
Then you have those
Dad,
who
what
you
button
can
is it
be
go
like relationally
in the boat
vulnerable
again?
with.
Dad, what button is to go in the boat?
You right click on it. There you go.
I'm just trying to go on the other side of the sea.
Okay.
Of the
Or
water.
WASD to move your boat.
Good job, Bailey.
Whoops. I got in the wrong boat.
Or, and then left shift to get out. There you go. You're out. Good job. Hi, Ethan.
Hey.
Ooh.
So that's like a part of a conversation that I had with my dad,
Yeah.
just about like he's convinced that if you read the Bible, that will just make you a better person to those people around you without practicing anything.
Yeah.
And it's the whole faith without works situation laid out by James. And you can't have like you won't have your works without the faith.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where it's like seeing, like, you have to practice like that vulnerability with people
Yeah.
to like, and just it doesn't have to be these like giant big things. Like on Sunday, I don't think he'd mind me sharing this, but Elijah was like drumming on the seat behind us in service, and I was like, "Oh, I can give Elijah a hard time because he's a joking guy."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know it was Christmas. Are you the little drummer boy?" Because it was Easter, so it was like a
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of a joke. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I want to encourage Elijah
Yeah.
in his drumming because I do think he's a good drummer, and I think that joke, although could be taken as a funny thing, I don't think I have a relationship enough with him to
Yeah.
joke with him. So I think maybe that could be perceived. And he didn't tell me that he perceived it as whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But after service, I went up to him and I was like, "Hey, just to let you know, I really do think you're a really good drummer. I want you to
But
know, like, I didn't mean any like ill will like towards you, and like I really do like every time you drum with us, I think you do a good job." And he's like, "Yeah, like yeah, sure,"
He's
you
not-
know, kind of like
Yeah.
shrugging it off. And I was like, I really do, like I'm being honest,
Yeah.
you
said,
know. And it's like just like those checks in your heart of being like, "Hey, what if what I said?" Like I'm not gonna double down like on what I said. Like, oh, he needs to toughen up because whatever, you know. And like I'm a very like empathetic person, anyways.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I've been referred to as like sensitive my whole life and made fun of and everything like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like, are my words life giving
Yeah.
or are they tearing down? And if there's a chance that what I said was tearing someone down, um, I'd rather probably just spend the time of eating maybe some humble pie and like going to that person and being like, "Hey, I like genuinely desire to like make sure that like you're encouraged,
Yeah.
you know, and say that like I'm sorry."
Yeah. I,
So
I'm actually under the opinion when it comes to reading the Bible, um, I like it's way better to do it in the community. A community can help you understand what the hell you're reading. Because
sorry,
like especially once you get to
language.
especially once you get to Genesis 26, like you have Tamar, like
Hmm.
pretty much acting like a temple prostitute to continue to get a kid. Like,
Hmm.
and from Western eyes, what is that? That's weird. And so there's just a lot of, and so I
You
think,
mean
huh?
sorry? Or is it um? Remind me, because my brain's saying that Tamar is
No, my brain might be thinking of
uh
a different name. It might be a different name.
uh
No,
Abraham.
no, you're right.
That's
It's Judah and Tamar.
Yeah. So, and so yeah. So in that story, it's just like really just really random story just placed into Genesis, but pretty much one of Judah's sons died and his died without a child.
Mm.
And so Judah was like, "You know what? Wait till one of my other sons get old enough, then you can have a kid with him." And it's like the dude's like it's like a child, you know? Like wait till the child is grown up. And while she actually seized she actually sees the promise. And this is later on. This is later on interpretation. This is why she's considered a lady of righteousness, is because usually men in the Bible are screw ups, and so these ladies actually continue the promised seed. That's why you see Tamar actually in the genealogy. I want to say the book of Matthew, but without that help of reading through, like there are people who have been told to just read the Bible and thumbs up, you're good to go. Like,
Mhm.
like it is
Yeah, and
it's a
then the
different
revelation of the Holy Spirit will be the thing that confronts you about anything that's going on. And like I think
I think it's escape.
as if
I'm not saying it's escape of discipleship. I say it's it's we are privileged that each one of us has access to a Bible, because
Mhm.
the way the Bible is written was supposed to be a community literature. That's why actually it does like a lot of the theological points is actually done through repetition, because it was done by a priest or a scribe, they will literally read it out loud, and in the ancient Hebrew, it's ancient Hebrew is just beautiful, but again, a lot of it's lost in interpretation. But like it'll actually like do a lot of story theological points by repetitions of word and actually how it plays on those words. Like when I said earlier about the law, about how when you see a lady that's beautiful, like good and took, like that's the writer doing the play. But someone in our Western sense, like we are not trained for the long meditation of literature. We're a one and done. That's how I treat video games. Is how we treat how we treat any literature is one and done. Like, and so yeah. So I'm on like I was like let's do this community. Let's constantly work through this. Let's work through the very ugly parts, like in the book of Judges, where a priest and his concubine are walking, and they go into a city, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to rape you," and he's like, "Here, take my concubine," like, and then that terrible, just lowest, saddest depravity of that's in like it's one of the it's probably the lowest point, one of the lowest points in the scripture.
Yeah.
And it's like if someone reads that and they're like, yeah, this is good. This is good stuff, yo. Like without working through like what is the Bible trying to say through these very terrible human like human stories, like atrocities, like human and so but I am there because of community and listening to people smarter than me and coming to these realizations of it being meditation literature. You work through it together, see the beautifulness that it is, and it's a cross culture experience. So with it being a cross culture, if I go overseas, and let's say we're all influenced by anime and manga these days, Japanese, a Studio Ghibli, let's say a Studio Ghibli film, and there's something like a Japanese audience is going to get that me as a Western not going to get.
Yeah,
that's on me. Like that's just on me. And we don't do that for the ancient literature, for the ancient scripture.
But the Western Church has cultivated the an idea of the simplest interpretation is the correct interpretation. It's anti-intellectualism is what they've cultivated.
I'll say in the very in certain strains, yes.
Evangelicalism, then.
Yeah, because you and I we were not raised. A lot of my teaching has been people who have been raised in high church, so Anglican and Presbyterian, like they actually value education.
Right.
And so there's people in our community who value education, but I do know that
at the same time. Sorry, go ahead.
And I do know that we were raised with just pray, let the Holy Spirit lead, and boom, you got it. And when it comes to loving your neighbor and calling people to King Jesus and getting your story, like
there you are.
Like it's a start, yes, but there's also a lot of beautiful, like there's like we're like at it's just like one fragment of a diamond that has been very overly focused, like one glimmer of a diamond. Like when we look at ancient scripture and what it teaches, it's the full diamond that we have to then wrestle and comprehend with.
Yeah. Well, I think that's most beautifully done in a community where you can be wrong.
Yeah.
And learn. But like there's no like, even in church on Sunday if Demetrius says something that is that's depends on like if you go to community groups and stuff like that. But what like how are you being confronted by like things that you learned that you may disagree with, or like discuss. And I think unless you're intentional about talking to people about it, then you're not gonna. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I also I think like it's like always wrestling within our culture and how our culture deals with conflicting ideas. Like for instance, when I go overseas to an honor or shame culture, and
Mhm.
if I have an issue, if I have conflict with someone and honor shame culture, I actually don't go directly with them. I send a mediator.
Right.
And so I think, and this is where I guess this will be the brotherly confrontation, is think about how in our culture, and it might be the way you're doing it, but then humbly in our culture, how do we step into a place where we discuss hard issues in a way where the person feels honored?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question because it also I feel like we innately do that in a lot of ways, um,
Are you coming up?
culturally, but individually,
Come on.
like you have to know the person.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's why
Sit
like,
here.
and I think generally since empathy has been so like even though like in our society like empathy is a value but the source is kind of lost like King Jesus in the early church like that's a source of actually like the hyper charge up empathy in our culture. But because of that, because the empathy is charged into, there's generally like everyone generally tries to operate
Aw.
with a sense of innocence.
Aw.
Like usually no one just goes out and like ha ha ha.
Still.
I am
For a little bit longer.
I like the destruction of X, Y, and Z.
Just for a little bit longer.
Right.
Unless my culture then like unless you know and you get innocent with this is a hard screw word innocent guilt culture. Unless I say this group is evil. Okay. Love you, sweet Q.
Yeah.
Hey Bailey, come here. It's bedtime, sweet Q. She's having to go to bed. Okay. Hey Bailey, you want to say goodnight to Peter and Ethan? No, you're sad. Okay, hold it. Oh, you want Daddy to show you how to turn off your computer? Okay, you want Daddy to turn it off? Okay. 1 second. Let me.
No worries. You're good.
Let me turn off this wireless headset so I'm not talking to two headsets at once. Oh, okay. I think a really good book that you'll like enjoy is called Unclean by Unclean. I want to say it is Richard Beck. It's been a while. Yeah. Yeah, Unclean Meditations on Purity, Hospitality, and Morality. I think it's a really good book. I don't go to his conclusions
Mm-hmm.
of why, but it's a really good book. But yeah, but pretty much like where I was saying is once in the innocent ghost culture, when we can innocently say that this person is evil and the whole group is everything they do is evil, so bring out all the guns and everything you do is justified and moral because they are the object
Yeah.
of evil. Yeah, and that is like that is a very cultural evil that to go up against, you then are seen as part of that group that we are trained to hate and loathe. And so really, my friend, what I'm saying where I'm yeah, it's is we think it's a Christianity thing, but it's actually very much it's an American cultural thing.
Yeah.
And sadly like we just don't realize that we are also just as culturally influenced. The church is a lot of times just culturally influenced in how we relate to the other. We're probably more, I'll say sadly, we're probably more culturally influenced than Jesus' empathy, love for other influenced. If I can just, yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
because, I think, and I guess like, it's interesting how much like I'll say for instance, I find it really interesting that, so CPAC is a conservative Christian
Hmm.
union, right? I thought it was really interesting that Elon Musk had a place of influence there because he doesn't cling to Jesus. He has 17 children. Like he yeah, he does not hold to Christian values. Like does not hold to
Right.
Jesus. It's interesting because and that was glorified.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
again,
because
he's in their innocent guilt culture. He's in the group. He is of value. But but yet, calling out for lives in a different group, from a different group, you're seen. It's very easy to get seen as the enemy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so does that all? Am I making sense?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think we're like in a lot of ways we're on the same page.
Yeah, and I will say like as I'll again like I find, me, I find Jesus, clinging to Jesus, the scriptures that point towards Jesus, and I'll say all scriptures point towards Jesus, to be the most beautiful piece of literature that has to be God inspired because I love Jesus. And so I am ready in a friendly way to say, hey, what you're experiencing is pretty much us as individuals living echoes away from the Eden ideal. And so I will say, like, especially talking to a fellow Christian, a fellow clinger of Jesus, I will say that it will be probably a lot more beneficial if we're trying to say have people have more of an empathy model, is then turning that more towards Jesus, the Eden narrative, and I'll say that I'll take a lot of meditation and scripture to get there. And you don't, and again, you don't, that's not, also, if you don't feel like that's your job, then, you don't, I'll say,
It's
I'll say,
not my job to do what.
I think I think my hope for you is to, um, is to keep wrestling because my hope for you is to keep on wrestling with, is Jesus truly, like, if Jesus truly who he is he like the hero of your life, and what that looks for for the everyday engagements. Because I'll say that will, because a lot of the engagements I see you doing is with people who cling to that, and so I think that also influences the way that of that engagement.
I think I engage well with Christians because it's also the society that I've engaged with the most
Yeah,
in pretty much for the last 33 years of my life. And it's like I know foundationally what people are supposed to believe, or supposed, if they say they believe
hmm,
whatever what they believe.
yeah, yeah. And I think when it comes to, how do I say this, with, so we're one to get, like, we're, for you to get your sense of what is right and wrong, and the value, and then also then to say, hey, here is the other person's sense of right and wrong. Like right now you have like I've heard from you that you're in a very much, you're still wrestling that out.
Do you want to be more specific?
Oh, like in our previous conversation, like you're reading a lot of you're going through some novels from feminist
Yeah.
libertarian, like
Or like liberation theology.
liberation theology, yeah.
Yeah.
Once, like, I know from my experience that these kind of conversations before, when I was in this place of confusion, was almost a dog chasing its tail.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that life started happening when I decided that where I was on the fence.
I mean, if for what it's worth, I can't say that God exists right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
The funny thing about liberation theology to me is that I would say, like, in my opinion, I have a much more naturalistic view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean I'm gonna disassociate myself from people who believe that God exists.
Mm-hmm.
I admire people who believe God exists. But I don't, I mean, like my parents,
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect them to believe or have the same values when it comes to like LGBTQIA plus people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not gonna expect them to believe the same thing as me because or the same views on abortion. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the um, but to appeal to, I guess, what I grew up with and what I see as I'm going to church, what I see, because also like there's an aspect of me going to church because if I stopped going to church, I know immediately people will discount whatever I believe or whatever I'm going through as just being wayward and whatever and
Mm-hmm.
saying I didn't do it right or whatever. I could spend 10 years deconstructing to come to the same conclusion that I've come to already.
Mm-hmm.
And then people will still say I didn't do enough. But then that's a whole question of like, if you believe what you believe, then my belief has to be my choice. And I'm not giving myself the option to always say no to the possibility that God exists. And it's like, it's funny because it's like that, like, sure, the possibility that I would be burning forever in a lake of fire if I die tomorrow by getting hit by a car. Um, then that's my choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it is. I can't pretend. I'm not going to pretend. Like, and that's a funny situation too in and of itself, because a lot of people in church would rather me pretend to be a Christian and not have a conversation or just be more comfortable around people who are just not saying anything about it, or
Mm-hmm.
just someone who's openly like I can't say that God exists. That's not something that I believe right now.
Yeah.
But being in church, I get to hear people's interpretation of scripture. I get to hear people struggling through things. I get to hear people praying. I get to see Christians struggling and basically having group therapy and wrestling with really human problems that a community is really helpful in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really beautiful. And then I have people who are in my life who decide to go to church,
Mm-hmm.
get what they want out of it, claim belief in God as their saving grace, as their get out of hell card. But then in every other aspect of life, live capitalistic, white supremacist, like Christian nationalist views, and just to enact those kinds of like ideologies on the people around them.
Yeah.
And then it's like not confronted.
Yeah.
You know, because you have a community of people around you who are maybe too scared to confront you or who agree with you. Like growing up in Sandy, you have like a bunch of people who would rather die on the steps of their porch with their gun, or they're like they have a fantasy of violence of killing someone or someone breaking into their house just so they could shoot them with a gun.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, the pliability in people is abysmal. But, like I guess who am I to, call people to different things if I don't believe what people believe, or that like my word is not as valuable as someone who believes in gods. Like that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I think,
I don't know. It's a funny place to be. I'm not pretending because I could very easily just like cut everyone out that I
Yeah.
don't agree with, or that I, but it's not what I'm gonna do. I'm not planning on doing that.
yeah, just, it's interesting. It's like, even as someone who still clings to Jesus, what you said of as other people have it stated as value is actually like, I will say is un Jesus like the get out of jail free card. Like, actually, Jesus says he's bringing the kingdom of heaven here and now. What does that mean today? Clinging to Jesus. How does that affect me now? How did Jesus? That's always like one of those first questions. I find it really amazing to ask. That's through that process of, okay, when Jesus said he's bringing the kingdom of heaven here on earth, what do you think he means?
Are you asking that question to me or
No.
rhetorically?
I mean, I not just more of like direct to the other. I guess I think it is a good question. I think like you and I, since we're both raised in the church, like I feel like you have had some, like, how what Jesus said is actually what Jesus said is not Western Christianese. As I think get out of jail free card, the focus on just what, as long as you believe in Jesus, it doesn't really matter what, like, it all, like, they're not saying this, but in practice they're saying this. It almost doesn't matter what you do now. It's more about,
Right. Well, that's what my dad's view on, like reading the Bible
yeah,
makes it so that you're, basically that means more than actual, I guess, like accountability. If that makes any
Yeah.
sense.
and so in here, I guess here is my criticism is I used to find this in myself, is I don't like something, and so I adopt the absolute opposite position and I defend the opposite position. Instead of going, okay, what is the source material? that especially the church is riffing off of what Christians are riffing off. And then that's when like for me, like Jesus, like he saved me out of like literally like saved me out of one of the most abusal, you know, it's like like declaring allegiance to him like was like when life happened. And so like Jesus throughout the many years I used to jump ship on multiple viewpoints, but I still cling to Jesus. And I'll still say even when I was 14, 13 and didn't know anything about the Bible or anything about political theology, all these things that we're all deeply discussing, that Jesus still like that's who I declare allegiance to, and that's who. But I was in such a confused state until like I really started like, and I think through the helps of the Bio Project and the helps through N.T. Wright, Tim Keller, like these like people who actually study the Bible and help me like try to like properly deconstruct is like to criticize like okay, it's like one thing to like just to go, all right, you're like let's put up boom, let's put misogynist. Okay, why is the practice look misogynist? Like, why do the practice look white supremacy? Okay, what are these people say is of value? Like, unless, like, you know, if I'm going to go into a Muslim culture, I better really get astute in their society, in their writings, in their literature, the hadiths. Like, if I'm going there, I got to really show that I know what I'm talking about. And I'll say like, I think this is the hard part is everyone feels like they know what Jesus and Christianity is all about because we were raised in the church. But the reality is we actually, just being raised in a church, you're probably not going to know a lot of the Bible, which is a sad reality. But that's just the reality. People don't really know as much as like they don't know. Like they don't. Like, like we actually are more influenced by Platonic thinking than ancient Hebrew thinking. Like straight up. Especially
So the funny thing about that is like, so does that mean that like everybody who has more Platonic Plato ridden theology is going to hell?
I will say again, thanks be to Christ that when people declare allegiance to him, he will, and that's part of the Holy Spirit, is the Holy Spirit is always working this out of, I'll say like it's working out of the church. And like, there's these apocalyptic moments, and apocalypse in Greek just means being revealed. Like let's say like on the table I have a array of food, and I had a sheet on it. Me removing the sheet, apocalypse revealed. But I'll say we're having a bunch of revealed moments of where our beliefs are not cutting it. And so then it leaves the individual. Are they going to seize righteousness on their own? Are they going to take from the tree and see and like just say, hey, like I serve you, God, but I'm taking from this. I'm taking from this. And we're going to keep on having these apocalyptic moments until like we realize like we got to look towards Yahweh for wisdom and not define good and bad in our own eyes. And we got to meditate on this literature because like scripture time and time again, like when the moment that Yahweh pinged himself by saying, I am going to bring salvation to the world through this people group. I mean, that's what the Tanakh, the Old Testament, like that's what it shows is a good God and messed up, royally messed up people. But yet this good God keeps on bringing his promises, keeps on bringing, yeah, because I'm not going to say, like, that's the beautiful part about being critical is actually by being critical of the church, I'm following the writings of scripture. I don't have to say that we got it okay. Like actually the letters in the New Testament and the Second Testament, like the moment that they're saying like, all right, here's the beautiful things all Jesus has done, each one of those letters does that. Here's the beautiful things Jesus has done. Now, in reflection of who Jesus is, who is the truly Israelite one, in reflection of the Tanakh, now do these practices. And those practices are always Eden pointed. And so to answer your question is, are they? And again, like, and that's the question. Do you truly cling to King Jesus? Okay, you're there. Now this is what King Jesus is. Let's get the ball rolling. Let's start seizing wisdom on our own and saying it's Christianity. Let's start really looking on how scripture really, it is the most, it should shake everyone's foundation down to the bottom where they just say, hey, I need wisdom. I need Jesus. That's what scripture should be doing. I don't have this. I may, like, it should bring anyone who properly meditates on it, like, and properly meditates on Jesus, and so like I don't have the answers. I'm looking to the person I'm looking to the person who does. And then from there, I form my political theology. I form how to relate to my neighbor. And it starts creating the lenses to have proper wisdom. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think because you've made yourself receptive to scripture.
Yeah, and I think
it's able to inform what you believe because you've made yourself receptive to it.
And I'll say it starts with it first starts with Jesus. Since Jesus says that all scripture points towards him, like that is, I'll say that is who that is. There's no, like historically, there's no one greater than him. Like no one who had absolute power in a narrative, right? Had absolute power and absolute humbleness. Like you can't beat someone who has absolute privilege and then lays down the privilege. Like there's narrative speaking, there's no one greater than him. Like the scripture is like written like way out of its culture. It's written with full empathy when a time when empathy wasn't value. Like it is bonkers of thinking like how amazing that scripture is, especially at the time it was written. And so yeah, I'll say it starts with there. And so I'll say if people cling to Jesus in any conversation with a Jesus follower, like, and it's like, hey, like Jesus said this, what do you think about that? Like, and so it doesn't, if you really want the communities that is close to you that you're seeing having really terrible views and really terrible practice, I say like, start with that. It's like, because I'll say a lot of
people meditating on scripture.
Jesus. Like not too many people even know like that all scripture points towards Jesus. And usually there is not a community practice on reflecting one's life on these of reflecting one's life, reflecting one's views, reflecting one's everyday on Jesus and the truths that scripture do by pointing towards him. Like, well, at least I haven't seen that very often. Like,
can you say that one more time? You haven't seen what very often?
I have not seen where we look at the absolute, I have not seen the absolute meditation, like meditation. When I say meditation, I'm saying the Hebrew type of meditation where you take something and you just sit in it.
Mhm.
You read it over and over again, you think about it, and you let that really inform one's views and shapings on how they engage the other. I have not seen too much of that in the church.
For the sake of argument. Oh, you haven't seen very much of that practice in church?
Yeah, I'll say like I'll say like I say our community does a pretty good job, and not like, but like always the constant push and pull towards King Jesus. But I'll say like there's always more, and that's the beautiful thing is like we're never like here on our life like with Jesus, and there's actually never going to be enough, because if Jesus with the ultimate privilege, who then laid down the ultimate privilege for the other, like you can't go as high as Jesus and you can't go as low as Jesus, and then he calls the church to be that. And so everything in my life and hearing that message, if there's anything that I go, I want to hold on to this, you then see like what you actually have to give up for Jesus. It doesn't mean literally give up, but then you love Jesus more than those things that you're feeling. And it may have to be a literal give up, whatever those are.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a literal give up of wealth. It could be a literal give up on my views on X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, and at the same time seeing the absolute power of Jesus and the absolute laying down everything and meditating on those both realities and saying that I need to take up my cross and live that also. Like, that's not, I'll say like our church is stepping towards that, yes. But from, like when you see political Christian culture, you don't see that
There's
very
always,
often.
yeah. I think it's important to like talk about how like there should be a constant push towards that, in not a way of like that it needs to happen every single day. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like it needs to happen constantly. Like it's not just like, oh, I've made that push, if that makes sense.
Well, and I say that's part of the Lord's, and that's part of the prayer that Jesus taught us. Like there's a lot of like, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. There's the high ups, your will be done on earth as in heaven, and that's down to the low roads. Like, why us constantly thinking about the Lord, like Jesus, the Lord's prayer, we actually live that every day, because it really it's the small, like it's the daily living that out that then changes changes the macro, like the micro daily, just laying it down, which is like revealed in the Lord's Prayer. And I'm not saying you do the Lord's Prayer verbatim, but that should heavily, in meditation, that should heavily influence one's prayer, where you're focusing on the high and on the low, even before you ask for stuff. You're constantly just stepping into, again, not seizing wisdom on my own, not seeing knowledge of Tov and Ra on my own, good and bad on my own. I am constantly looking towards Jesus, who then in his life is the example of good and bad, of what wisdom looks like. Like by me constantly meditating, that influence daily how I engage the other. And then that, especially during moments of trauma, like, like both times, like when I got my hand lacerated and my head lacerated, by the grace of Christ, like I was able to still like talk to Jesus with the doctor, like because it's because of that constant meditation and practice where my life my life is constantly for the other, and that's really because of that meditation. And everything I'll say, like, we have to go against we the instant flip of change, like the instant flip. But literally, like when you make your decision, do it with somber thinking. Like, and I think that's a really, because our parents and we were grown up in it. We grew up with with the plays of I'm trying to remember what the play was called now.
Like sensationalism and stuff.
Well, remember the play where it's like you have like two teens driving on a car, and like churches will do these plays.
Yeah.
You know what play I'm talking about, right? I imagine your
Yeah.
church did it. Yeah, like it's these. You're gonna die. You may die tonight. Think
Yeah.
about it. Like that's actually not
Well,
like that's actually not
Jesus
how,
will come. Jesus will come at any moment.
yeah. It's these
Type
it's
thing.
these turn these instant like, and so a lot of our, and this is here's the sad reality. A lot of our parents, a lot of our ancestors were brought to the faith through fear. And not fear in the I fear the Lord because he's good. He's righteous. I declare allegiance to him because there's no better king. I can't think of no better empire than the empire of King Jesus, where the empire of King Jesus, he calls to lay down one's life. Like I can't.
Mhm.
Like there like I like just him alone, like, and that story I declare allegiance to. Like, and that's because I have gotten there through sound thinking. I wasn't brought to there by fear. So my faith is my faith was not done through fear. Like not like, oh no, I hope I made the right decision so I don't get little demons cackling ha 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 with pitchforks, like, which is a whole load of garbage. That's not what hell actually is, biblically speaking.
Mhm.
I don't get demons are not going to be poking me with pitchforks. But that's more medieval Platonic thinking, not Platonic, and also actually, if you care, that's actually
From Dante's Inferno.
yeah, like purgatory. Actually, that's like
Yeah.
the whole reason of the Protestant Reformation was because, like, not the whole reason, but one of the like a lot of things were the Protestant Reformation was a boiling pot of a lot of just injustice by the church empire then.
Mhm.
But I will say, like, and this is why, like, I love our conversations. I love partnering with you. It's because I say, like, if you do come to King Jesus through sound mind, through sound reasoning, and not through, I hope I don't get blasted away, like, you come to a place where there is truly no better king in the whole universe, and time and space and history, in the cosmos, in the galactic universe, and that story, that king, I want to dedicate my life to. I want to model my life towards that. Dude, like, I want that for someone than them being afraid every day that they're going to die, or Jesus is going to come back and then all of a sudden all my neighbors' clothes are just going to be folded up right
Yeah.
there and I'm left behind. Like,
And they'll get their comeuppance.
yeah. Like, I don't want that for you. I want, like, I do, like, I do, like, I absolutely do want you to declare allegiance to King Jesus.
I wouldn't respect you if I knew that you were someone who wanted that for me.
But then you gotta, like, understand, like, I'm there because by thanks be to Christ, I had a youth pastor who was always like, he let us play Dungeons and Dragons, even though it got church members. We played like Dungeons and Dragons in the gym, and they got church members who tried to get my youth pastor fired. Like, my youth pastor didn't fear anyone, really. Like, luckily that's been my model, but not everyone has had that model.
Mm-hmm.
like that fear like also then goes into and then back to our political conversations. Like it's a full package. Like it's sadly like a lot of people's belief is on sinking sand. And so like the moment, like I'll say, like the moment that you are experiencing such whiplash from my brothers and sisters in the faith is because it's, once you remove one peg on the very sadly ugly toppling jungle that is, the whole thing comes crumbling down, because compromise and empire model thinking, it's the full package. Like either you're all for the empire model or you're not, and then now you're an outlier. And but also, like, thanks be to Christ, like he lives the example on how to just be with the other when people like don't get it. Because you see Jesus constantly struggling with people who just don't get it, where they're all thinking empire model. Actually, all his disciples were thinking empire model. John the Baptist was thinking empire model.
Yeah.
And so, like, we, like, through our own compromises and through a society of compromise, sin, we are reared to think empire model. And I say, like, you're right now, even though you don't declare allegiance to King Jesus, the empire model you're coming out of. And so the moment that you come out of the empire, like, and that's like, yeah, like you're coming out of the empire model. And so now it's like, I'll say, like, and again, like, me, I'm always going to point you toward the beautiful Jesus empire, where it's a ruling that's vastly different. It's a ruling that is where you rule by laying down one's life. The fact that the cross is a throne, like Jesus is ascending on his throne when he ascended on the cross, like that's how he ruled. Like I seriously can't think of anything more powerful than that. Especially for saying that that's a story in the first century. There was no ruling by dying there was no ruling by dying. That's why, like, the Jews were like, dude, that's why the ancient Jews who didn't cling to Jesus, that's what Paul persecuted. It's like, you're making all of us serve a different God. And so they had actually like good logical reason to go after Christians, because they thought there was like, if you're making to serve a different God, then everything that we fought for to have our land, we're going to lose. And so, like, logically speaking, in empire model, the Jews and Paul were in the right mindset. And then Jesus, he's just the greatest underminer of any empire thinking. As I'll say, any model outside of Jesus will have empire. Because the reality is even when I went to Warner Pacific, I was still an outsider, because I will not cling to everything that everyone in the liberal Christian camp wanted me to cling to. So I could not get there. Sadly, yeah. And I'll say, like, like the classic, like, any minority group who now has the power usually becomes an oppressor. Historically speaking. And so,
yeah.
And that's why, like, that's the beauty of King Jesus. That's the beauty of the Jesus empire. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. Do you feel heard?
Do
you feel like I don't want you to feel like I'm over talking to you. I just want to make sure you feel heard.
I mean, for what it's worth, in conversations like these, it probably would be prudent to ask more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for what it's worth, like and it's like not a point of like pride,
Yeah.
but like I was going to Door of Hope when Tim Mackey was creating like the Bible Project, and he was like giving like stuff. I went to his like 6 a.m. Bible study. That he
Yeah.
like went through the whole Torah like which is proto Bible Project stuff.
Yeah. I remember.
But
Yeah.
like
I remember.
I'm not unfamiliar um with it in a way, you know,
Yeah.
and I think there's are you familiar with demand avoidance? In with ADHD? Do you know what that is?
You're going to have to teach me. Actually, I don't know what demand avoidance is. I can guess
Demand
based on the name,
yeah,
but please tell me.
yeah. But yeah, it's basically, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory when someone tells you like what to think, how to feel, or like if I tell Nicole to like do something when she was always already gonna do that thing,
Mm-hmm.
she's like, well, no, I'm not gonna do that because um like I was already gonna do it, and now I just like feel extreme like with people with ADHD, things feel very strong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's like this insatiable urge just to like not do the thing you just told me to do because I was already planning on doing it.
Yeah.
Um, but there's an aspect of that in a little bit because I guess when you say um that I am now breaking the mold as if it's like recent, um
Mm.
because it hasn't been recent. Um,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
growing up, like like and I guess there's like an aspect of it feels like you're telling me how I feel or what I've been going through
Yeah.
when in like when in reality like it feels like there's sorry, I'm just trying to think. I just want to
Yeah.
make
I
sure
know.
I'm saying this in a
Yeah.
kind way. Like I don't ever want you to feel like
No.
I'm not mad at you or like saying you said the wrong thing to me and I don't want to be
No.
friends anymore or anything like that.
Yeah. Sorry.
But
So.
like I could in my heart, I like when you said like, "Oh, this is what you're feeling." I was like immediately my like defenses went up. I'm like, okay, I like,
Hmm.
and so that's also on me of being like communicating that to you, where it's like that doesn't necessarily make me feel considered.
Okay.
When you like make a statement about me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's fair. I will work on that. I think
I mean, yeah, and then this is I've been telling my parents this a ton too. It's like this right here is the exact situation where it's the beauty of relationship. It's the beauty of friendship. It's the beauty of love
Mm-hmm.
because it means that I will have the opportunity or um what we will have the opportunity to be in conflict even in small ways,
Mm-hmm.
but the relationship is worth talking through those things. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is our privilege of being friends.
Yeah.
Is that you can tell me like, "Hey Peter, what you said was rude to
Yeah.
me," or I can say like, "Hey, I was like a little defensive when I heard you make a statement like this." You know, it's
Yeah.
like because like traditionally, like growing up as well, it's not all about religion, but my parents would like say stuff like, "Oh, I just like don't want to be walking on eggshells like around these people." I'm like, that's the cost of relationship.
Yeah.
Like that's a beautiful aspect of like learning how someone feels cared for.
Yeah.
It's like I know my brother-in-law is an extremely giving person, and I'm never going to ask when if I know he's busy, I'm not going to ask him for help for something because I know he'll probably overextend himself, and I want to be like it's also his decision because he's an adult, but I
Yeah.
want to be conscientious of that. I want to be kind to him,
Yeah.
you know, and it's like yeah. So I think that's yeah. So all that to say, I want you to know that I consider these kinds of conversations to be a huge privilege
Yeah.
because it's because I mean, like I mentioned earlier too, it's like if I wouldn't be having this conversation with you if I didn't think I could have this conversation with you because you are a genuine enough, you're a genuine person.
Yeah. And
You're so
yeah, and I want to say thank you. Usually I f- usually I'm constantly, so thank you for telling me I need to ask more questions to work through the conversation, because I tell myself that I did not tell myself that in this conversation. Like, that's something I'm trying to train myself to do.
well, you know what? Practice as much as you want on me. I give you that permission. Like
Yeah.
that I will never be offended.
Yeah, and no, you're right. Like, and that's something that is like been has been repeated to me a lot. And so, and that's, I think, I just forgot that I need to.
Oh, no worries.
For some reason tonight I think my excuse is just I'm tired.
Oh, you know what? You did say that earlier, and
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. Like when, yeah, but now that you mention it, I was like, that totally makes sense. Like, but that like, sorry, I just think that's like so good.
yeah. So
Like that's the thing that I love
I think in our
about
previous conversation I
fellowship.
did ask questions to try to
Yeah.
help through the conversation. This time, yeah, I talked a lot. I got very, yeah. Brendan's coming over. Cool. All right. So yeah, my and I'll work on that. Thank you so much for telling me. Yeah, as I absolutely need to work on that. So I definitely don't want you to feel alienated. I don't want other people feeling alienated, and that's something I need to work on. So thank you.
I know for a fact uh you'll tell me what's on your heart and you know uh exactly how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and I know that you want the best for me.
Yeah. Well, and it's really interesting is having a conversation with you. Like, we have a lot in similar, I'll say, in a lot of our political, because I'll say, like, from, like, especially from what we share, I feel like you and I have a lot in similar. I just never I just never got to the place where I just don't believe that there's a God, or I don't like have not
Yeah.
seen evidence. Like, I never gotten, and so here's this. I agree with you. You're my brother in that, but
And I want you to know that like I'm not trying to convince anyone to be
oh
on like my side or anything like that. Like
but for me, understand, I'm trying to convince you, and so
yeah.
I know
And
I need to do that
I'll let you
nicer.
know there's no convincing that you can do that will convince me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you, again, like how I said earlier, is in the constant conversation, you will have to get there through your conscience and through your convictions. But
Right. Yeah.
but if I can give you more ammo in your quiver on your downtime and your processing, it's like, hey, I thought this. I record, like Corey saying this. When you're engaging other Christians, here I heard this, like, because yeah, I just
Yeah.
hope that in this conversation I just give this, yeah, because I find, like, especially since, and I think this is this is where it's at. I find this to be the most delightful way of living. There is no better way of
Yep.
living. This is the most hopeful. Like, I experience life bountifully because
Mhm.
of who Jesus is and declaring my allegiance to him and living life in this, like seeing him as being the truth. Like since all these things I absolutely believe, and I experienced life, I want that life. I want that hope for you. Um and so I'm not trying to convince you because I want another proselyte. I want to, haha, I got Peter to say I'm right. No, I want you to experience life and life in abundance,
Mhm.
because that's what I believe Jesus brings, is life and life in abundance. And so any and all of my conversations, it's gonna be nights where we just play Teenage Mutant Turtles and we have a great time together. There's gonna be nights like tonight where if I could just tell you about my delight, like if I can, there's any way I could expound more on my delightful King in a way that honors him and dignifies him, and when we hear practices and views by individuals who just don't know and don't understand because they sadly have a misconstrued belief, like, and it's like, and the damage that's being wrought, like when the
Yeah.
church compromises with warmongering, like it's like scripture screams like that's not the way of peace. We
Yeah.
need to be like as I know, like as you're engaging sad beliefs, I always want to go, that's not the delightful King I declare allegiance to. What he said, and that's where it's like, that's the one thing I just, at the very beginning of our conversation, that was the one thing that I just wanted to lead to, was even Jesus was sad when Israel wasn't about the way of peace during his time.
Hmm.
And then he declared judgment on Israel at his time. I'm not going to say, I won't go far as say that there is judgment for Israel during this time, because I'm not Jesus, I'm not Yahweh. But it's really sad when people are not about the way of peace, when people clinging to Jesus are not sad at the atrocities that, when innocent lives die, like that. Yeah, that's not how the scriptures reveal my King.
Yeah. I think I I would love to hear what is giving you life. Like
Yeah.
what you're learning, how you're being challenged, things you're like struggling through, and how then you're contextualizing that with scripture.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not interested in proofs or um
Tit for tat
arguments.
logic.
Sorry?
Tit for tat logic. Like you bring a point, I
Yeah.
bring a counterpoint, you
Yeah.
counterpoint. You don't.
Yeah.
We're not here.
I
This
think
is not James White debate right now.
I yeah, I want to see um people around me
Mm-hmm.
living their faith, not living out a faith, not out like living a belief, if that makes sense. Like I
Yeah.
want I like being around like the part of the one of the reasons of coming to church is like I see Demetrius facilitating church in a very um reasonable manner. Um I know him enough
Yeah.
to know that he has certain personal thought processes,
Mm-hmm.
and to see um also then how he graciously and kindly facilitates conversation and guides people, like even just the other day, like during prayer gathering on the prayer night, someone started going off about downtown Portland and how sinful it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he or how witchcraft laden it is.
Yeah.
And he guided the conversation into, and I mean, all he did was say, "Man, it sounds like there's a lot of hungry people down there."
Yeah.
I think that's such an honoring way of talking about someone and people. It's like either you could be fear mongering or you could be contextualizing people as
Yeah.
people who are made in the image of God.
Yeah.
It's like I get like the privilege of seeing people in a church operate as the church.
Yeah.
Like that's honestly the biggest like witness to me right now. And like that, and it's, I don't know if I can be of some encouragement. Like there are people like, if not like, and it's such an odd, and like I've been saying, it's an odd position to be in, but it's an odd position to be in a church where I don't necessarily like, I like to say that, like, as someone with a tremendous amount of doubt, like, where is my place in church? Because I feel like there's a prerequisite of faith,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll all solve it afterwards. Um, and I've had that faith for my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
and no amount of that faith, um, I don't know if I want to make that statement. Sorry, I'm gonna back up,
Okay.
but um, I just didn't think it was gonna be true.
Yeah.
So, or that I felt it to be true. But yeah, I had that faith, and now I don't.
Yeah.
Um, I know how to operate in a church environment, like in all like it's it's funny because I still really enjoy praying,
Mm-hmm.
and I still really like I enjoy worship, and like those things have always been, and the way that I contextualize them, in no way is it for um to sow doubt or try to convince anyone, um but to be in a place, I guess, to help you kind of understand, I guess, more just like about me
Mm-hmm.
as a sensitive man growing up in a patriarchal household where the only emotion that I could feel was anger and violence. Like that was those. That's what is trained. You know, it's like you're never supposed to back down. You have grit. You have tenacity.
Batman.
You be a man. Like man up.
Yeah.
Diamond plate and rub dirt in the wound. It'll get better.
Yeah. So
And then you enter
full heads
into
up.
a
Sorry, I don't mean to
Sorry.
interrupt.
No worries.
Just, hey, Brendan. Brendan's walked in, so I'll just give you a heads up.
Oh,
Brendan
yeah.
walked in.
Yeah. And then you enter into a church where you get to see like men standing up in front of the church crying.
Yeah.
While they're praying. There's this one safe place
Mm-hmm.
where I could be sensitive. And I could worship. And as a young boy with undiagnosed ADHD,
Yeah.
just super craving sensory information, and man, music really helped a lot with that.
Mm-hmm.
Is as someone who had just overwhelming emotion as a child and complete dysregulation, singing
Mm-hmm.
and music, but so much of that was also tied to, well, shame.
Mm-hmm.
Like you misbehave or you do things that are um, you know, you need to ask forgiveness for, and then you just keep on sinning again and again. And every time I sin as a kid, it's like, oh, like I just have all these emotions. Lord God, like take this from me,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Which
it's
is
like,
sad.
yeah, yeah. And um, but the real like I think the hardest thing for me in all of this is the idea of disappointing people. And that's
Mhm.
part of the reason why I posted on Facebook
Yeah.
to just for exposure therapy of just I know it would disappoint people.
Yeah.
I know it would make people mad.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to pretend I'm not going to like placate everyone.
Yeah.
And I'm terrified of disappointing people, but I can't be honest with people if I can't disappoint people.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like I'm not always going to be in a position that always
Yeah.
placates everyone into making everyone like me.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not going to be an a-hole,
Yeah.
you know,
It-
but so there's like with disappointing people, um, there's another thing I was thinking about, but I can't
Yeah.
remember at the moment.
Yeah,
But-
and it's really interesting is like from what I'm hearing is it's like those sad, like I will say extremely un-Jesus un-Jesus teachings that were just are cultified, like those compromising cultural compromises, like tribal cultural compromises. And because you know it's like, you know, for me, like I remember all the way until like 12, 13, I hated the church. I hated going. Because as like I'm being abused at home, like
Mhm.
I just didn't care about God and I didn't care about the people there. Like because I just was just trying to survive. And then I was always in trauma. Brain mode is like you just try to survive the day.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so
That's really hard,
I
man.
had the opposite experience where church was a safe place, church like to experience because like the reality is my parents, my mom and stepdad were really good at putting on a face.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then they're really good at communicating this devil child that they have. And so, any moment, it's any moment that I'll like, and this, it'll be in school, in church, anywhere, like anywhere where sometimes that abuse will just flare outside the house. It will then, my voice will be, my voice and experience will be talked over, pretty much like I will not be gaslighted, but they'll like pretty much will gaslight me communicating to people like this is what I'm going through.
Yeah. It's really hard, man.
Yeah, and so that's I think, and like, you know, what's really interesting is, and I guess this is like and this is why like I'm like it's so interesting we're friends because I'm the opposite. Like, so when my dad was alive, before we went to church, and like, you know, like church then was comfortable because I had my dad and mom, like I had like that family stability. But then when he died when I was 8, like there was always abuse by my mom because my mom was undiagnosed high functioning autism, and she went through a lot of trauma, and a lot of that trauma was then poured out on me. Like I don't know if I told you this, but when I was young, I like even before my dad died, I wanted my mom to die. And this is just child
Mhm.
brain saying this, like child wishes, you know, and then I could just be with my
Yeah.
dad. Um, but then like, but because my mom really loved my dad, and she saw me as kind of the in between object, like she needed me out of the way to get more love from my dad.
Mm.
And so when my mom experienced the loss of my dad, she then got really deep into Christian culture.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything that I thought was comfortable, like any childhood comforts were gone and replaced with TBN Christian culture.
Yeah,
And I hated it.
that's really hard.
And so it's really interesting. You like, and I'm just saying like, it's so interesting how like this is your experience, and it shapes a lot of like
Yeah.
the value you see on church. And for me, it's like from the very get go, anytime it like a structure was glorified, because I was my mom, like like usually like with my mom, when she believed something, she believed it to a T and made everything about it.
Yeah.
And so I got to experience the high pendulum. And so then anytime like I saw that high pendulum, I was like, nope, not doing it. Like instant. Like,
Right.
and so like I've always like it's actually like the last couple years where since I realized the glorious grace of King Jesus, that then like I could actually be at church and not have to sit there the whole time criticizing every little inch of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was it made some really interesting conversation. And Rob and I was like, why can't we just go to church without you criticizing everything? And at that time, I was, you know, I just thought I
Because you
was
were
right.
working through trauma.
Yeah, I guess so. Just working through
Yeah, that's really
trauma,
hard.
and it's just like, yeah, like I until I came to terms with the grace of Jesus, and then it's the glorious like like all the beautifulness of Jesus, and then continually learning about the more beautifulness of Jesus. I had empathy and really just charitable thinking. Like it was hard for me to have charitable thinking.
Mm. Yeah. It sounds like you're in like a bit of a fight or flight scenario.
Oh, yeah. it's it's going to be a whole lifetime of has become more and more. Yes. Like it goes into everything. It's like even Minecraft, like for instance, like it even goes into the way I play video games. Like I am very goal driven. Like I don't ever stop into like a world and try to make a home in a world, like Minecraft. I don't ever build a home for real. Like I don't ever like, because for me, it's like, it's experience and go. And that's, and I'll say that like, that's part of the redemption nature of, for me realizing that it's part of the redemption nature of Jesus. He's able to take the evils and he calls it evil. But then he's like, all right, let me take that evil and redeem it and use it for something good. Because that's why, like, for me, like, it's not hard for me to uproot my life and just go to another country to move. Because my life has been uprooted so many times growing up. Like, all my childhood comforts, I don't have any childhood toys, like, any toys from childhood, any papers.
Yeah.
Like, people like every time like, yeah, my mom like says like, oh man, I came out as a big kid, or like people like, my mom has no birthing stories because she has autism and so she does not remember.
Yeah.
And so since as a child and even today, like I live so much in the moment. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
I
like
think also with ADHD, it's really hard, because it's really easy to live in the moment.
yeah,
Like object permanence is like really difficult.
yeah. And so yeah, so then you put trauma with ADHD
Yeah.
and you know, I am just still thankful for King Jesus because yeah, and then part of the life movement was even though people who had I'll say like had messed up theology, they still saw me in there were people that in the church and in family at the same time. Like when I started like actually like 13, 14 talking about like what I was going through and it's weird because
Yeah.
at that time I was so used to the abuse. It was just normal at that time. Like
Yeah.
and then they like it was through relationships and actually like because of the abuse and just living with people, my mom and my sister are both on the spectrum. I grew up with them. Like I was socially awkward. Like think of the
Yeah.
most socially awkward person you know, and then amplify that, and I was like me.
Yeah.
But there's like people in the church who then, by the grace of Christ, by them clinging to Jesus, they were like, they just let me be around, and it probably took months for me to start talking because I was being around. I want to be around people so much that I will overthink it so much that I will rarely ever talk. Like now, it's not too hard for me to talk and communicate. But at that time, like I was silent
Yeah.
because yeah, I was always over. Yeah, I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want to lose where I was at. I didn't want to
Yeah.
be in more trauma or more damage than I was. And so usually the overthinking led to silence.
That's really hard.
Yeah.
I'm really thankful that you had those people in your life that kind of took you under their wing.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah, thanks for listening. And
Oh, dude, thank you so much for telling me. Like, I've heard like bits and pieces, but I don't know, just being able to hear like you telling me, and I don't know, it's a privilege knowing that part of your story,
yeah.
because it's not, I know it's not easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's
Um,
like the sharing of the story and our growing up story, like it's very much into the formulation of who we are right now. So when you share, like I'm
yeah,
so grateful when you share. And so I was like, well, I think this would be a good time just to share like this is kind of some of the reasons and makeup of who I am right now is these are my experiences and my
yeah, yeah,
relationship with church and church culture.
totally,
Y-
yeah,
You know, what's funny is if I see like royal purple color, I get a little bit vomity a little bit because of how much church
mm,
colors were that royal purple.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There was so much stuff. Cause what year were you born?
90.
90. Okay, yeah. So you're just a little bit older than me. Just the church culture growing up in it, it's just like it was so celebrity driven, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like,
Have you ever listened to Rise and Fall of Mars Hill?
yeah. I have a lot of friends who are actually, some that were like really like almost on pretty much on staff. One guy I knew, he was one of the worship team leaders at Marcel.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, I grew up with a lot of Reformed Calvinist
Yeah.
people because of the homeschool movement, and they were like super into Mark Driscoll and all of his teachings.
Yeah. And the reason why I asked is like that. I think that's a really good analysis. Is I really loved how I think it's Christianity Today does like how they give everyone a
Uh-huh.
voice. They try to give everyone a voice.
Yeah, and to some, I'm sure it's still biased in some way.
Hmm. Sorry, Robin said
Like,
something to me about. I guess the Christianity
oh,
Today has one about the Satanic Panic.
oh,
That
that would be really good to listen to.
is it called Satanic Panic? Love the devil in the deep blue sea. What is a Satanic Panic?
That was in the 80s.
Oh, so like I have this distinct memory when I want to say 7 or 8. We're with my dad was alive and with one of our friends. They had I don't know if it was a movie. They had something. It was like about like the Satan and Hell's battle, like Satan and AC/DC, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, Robin's talking to me that she's explaining it to me. So movement through
No,
70s and 60s? 60s? 60 through 90s. Okay. Yeah. 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 I have to check that out. The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea. Ooh, sounds like a good one. But yeah, so I absolutely get what you say about celebrity cultures. I know I fell victim to celebrity culture. Um and I think like I also like there was a time when I was are you still there, Peter?
yeah, I'm still here. Yeah.
There's a time when I was heavy like I looked up to Mark Driscoll.
hmm
Um
I've listened to a good number of his teachings,
yeah.
but yeah, it's so yeah, it's hard to listen to now.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that actually the rise and fall of Marcel has also influenced the way I actually live stream. Um, it like is at the time I used to always have it so I see views, and like even though I constantly live stream, I now change it into a way where when I live stream, it's always people partnering with me, like they're viewing my daily engagements. I'm
hmm
not shifting my engagements for the viewers.
Right.
Um, but that was because there's that beautiful moment in it where like the guy was just like talking about like when you like go into like a cathedral, like how when you go into an actual building, like the how high the steeple is, showing like how high God is. Like there's
hmm
this and that's him in high church talk, because you know those ancient buildings, and even the ancient art, like everything has a symbolism and purpose, right?
hmm
Like they're speaking theology. But the moment that like live streaming culture, who's in front? The person. And
Sure.
so,
Yeah.
but yeah. But you were saying, sorry, I may have you're probably making the point about
No.
celebrity culture. We're just talking about growing up in that.
Oh no, it was just like it seemed like very I would say craze driven.
Yeah.
Like the latest thing, like like there was always some demon to like watch out for.
Yeah.
Like I remember our Japanese exchange student gave me a Pokemon keychain, and I cried because I thought it was gonna like bring demons into our house,
Yeah.
because people were like so freaked out about like all that, and like Harry Potter being like the worst thing in the world, and
Yeah.
things like that. And um yeah.
And yeah, and I'll say like sadly the church again experiencing apocalypse, a revealing of like how how sad. Yeah, like there's a lot of funny memes now about like, I think there's like the latest one where like what my aunt thinks whenever I play D&D, and it has like the people dancing and there's like a little demon that comes out of the middle. Have you
Yeah.
seen, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know that meme.
Yeah. And it's like, it's just, I remember like, it's so funny because the youth pastor who let us play D&D, there was a time when I was like 11 or 12 when Harry Potter was just exploding, that I was starting to read the books.
Hmm.
He was like, you shouldn't read that. And I was like, okay. But you know, and he is like, man, like I brought that up. I was like, man, I'm sorry. That was silly of me. Like he, I would really, yeah. It's so funny because, so when Brendan came over, he brought Kiera, and she and I both grew up in Redmond. So we shared the same youth pastor.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so she laughed when I remember I told her about that moment, and she laughed. A silly Jeremy moment. Well, and it's funny because Jeremy now, he actually DMs like one-shot Dungeons and Dragons all the time. And like I played Baldur's Gate 3 with him. Like he's a pretty cool pastor. But yeah, like a lot like
Sounds 3 edgy 5 me.
you know, it's funny, it's crazy how like the next generation takes the previous generation and like goes even to extreme. Because since I felt like it was okay to fight the system in high school, and so like I'll be the Christian that listens to Rage Against the Machine, you know, like fight the system, like it's okay. Like I'm a Christian, but I'm not that Christian.
Sure, yeah.
I'm
Well,
just,
it's like, yeah, it's like, are you just trying to be edgy or
yeah.
what?
I was trying to be edgy. I know.
And so, I mean, that's
I had
that's a good
dreadlocks.
question, though. Oh boy, white guy with dreadlocks is never a good look.
I
Sorry,
actually had lots of a lot of people say I looked good actually in dreadlocks at that time when I actually had hair. I won't look good now.
I meant racially, but
I mean,
Wait, Rory, you had hair?
I know.
oh man, Ethan coming in with the burn just out of nowhere. This whole conversation he comes in with a burn. What the heck?
Just dead silent, and then out of the blue, just
Yeah.
bam, roasted.
Oh my gosh.
I think it's I
That's so
always
funny.
think it's culture appropriation is a really, it's an interesting, if we want to go in that conversation. But when I hear more complaints about white people having dreads from white people than
Sure.
like if you go like if you talk to anyone from Jamaica, like any like place with dreads, like there's like, oh, that's cool, like no cares. Because I a culture,
Interesting.
if I can, like I guess my opinion about it, if you know, since that was brought up, is actually
Yeah.
a lot of cultures rip off each other. Like if you like anime rips, like it's interesting is like even watching Gintama, like they're showing the classic American or the classic French. It was
Mhm.
like this could like there's making a joke, but it's like that in a lot of levels they'll say that's culture like appropriation, you know.
Well, anime isn't a very good determination of
Okay,
cultural representation.
but you know, like I'm using, if we're just talking about just dreadlocks in general, then I guess we could just go down the line. I say there's a lot of like just dreadlocks. Okay, just if we're just talking about just dreadlocks, pretty much any and almost dreadlocks were kind of the norm for long hair. Like in the Bible, people had dreadlocks because like the Nazirite vow, you know, like one knot, and so like dreadlocks is kind of just a normal production of his long hair and just not having modern soaps and shampoos and conditioner. And so I'll say when it will be culture appropriation if someone just starts talking like if they're trying to be black, like what I forgot her name, white person who presented himself as a black person. Like I will logically deducing, I'll say that's definitely culture appropriation, but I won't say dreadlocks in general is cultural appropriation.
Are you? I think for me, it's a good question. Are you so dedicated to dreadlocks that you aren't open to changing your mind about dreadlocks?
I mean, I think again, like as a Jesus clinger, like I'll become all people, like anyone, and try and work with a community. Like I will be what I need to be in the community to point people towards the Jesus empire living. So the answer to that is no. Like
Huh.
I don't care really. Like I
Yeah.
want to practice as much as I can to speak to the culture I'm in. And if that culture even finds offensive eating pork, like if I was in a majority Islamic culture, like I won't eat pork ever because I don't want to offend them. Like I don't want to start with offense before calling them the King Jesus. Like that, I'll
Yeah.
embrace a halal diet any moment for that. Do I agree with it? Like, and that's part of limiting freedom, which if you want to, like Paul goes a lot into, especially with power and dominus, which then goes into like what I was saying about Jesus being the ultimate privilege, laying it down like that. I'll say, as a Jesus clinger, like for me especially, like that goes into every avenue that I'm at. I want to try to become, at least offensive as possible to talk about. Actually, probably the most offensive message and calling people to die to themselves. But I digress because yeah.
No,
But
I think it's a really good method of like going about it because there's a lot of discussion even in academia about what is and is not um fill in whatever blank as you start defining terms and what
mhm.
who can say what and what it's like I think a big aspect of it it's like using someone's different preferred pronouns. So someone you use the wrong preferred pronouns, and like anybody who is like, oh, I'm just so worried about using someone's wrong preferred pronouns. It's like, well, if you've ever had an interaction with someone who uses different pronouns, and then you say the wrong pronouns on accident, and they typically, in all of my situations, they either don't say anything or graciously say like, actually, I prefer this.
Yeah.
And then it's your opportunity to be like, oh, okay, like let me like accommodate, or like if you go somewhere and you have dreads as a white person and you're around black people and they inform you about like what that looks like to their community and things like that, maybe you won't have that experience. But like it's that thing, that willingness of like learning. It's like I think I had a really good experience. Nicole and I went and saw PJ Morton, who he's the son of a really prominent gospel, or he's a gospel singer, but his dad is a really prominent pastor in the South. And his opener was a DJ, and she was like, "You guys will know this one." And Nicole and I were saying there like, "We do not know this one." We were so out of our element culturally, because we hadn't grown up in the black community.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I find people who, so let me just, like, it's just like for myself, I thought to be inclusive or to be engaging with the community, it meant that I had to know something about it, that I could operate seamlessly within the community,
Yeah.
so I wouldn't call attention to myself, or that like I could be labeled as like one of us, something like that. Um, but I think the bigger thing, I was like, oh, like I don't need to pretend, but I also don't need to like pretend, like I don't need to pretend that I know, and I don't need to make a big deal about the fact that I don't know. And I just can be humble
Yeah.
about not knowing but being willing to learn.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really good experience for me to be like, okay, like what does it mean for me to like operate in different communities and be a white guy in other communities that have had different life experiences than me, and letting other people set the tone of an event or
Mhm.
things like that.
Yeah. And I'll say like that is just unraveling our cultural exceptionalism. Um, is I think like growing up and generally speaking, like we had like a lot, especially growing up, a lot of our media was presented with white heroes, male white heroes. Um, and I actually went through a moment at Warner Pacific, like, what is my culture? Like, I don't know. How do I form? And it's like, and in that confusing space, it's just like, you know what? And so then I tried to adopt a lot of other cultures stuff. And I was like, you know what?
Sure.
I like what I like, but I've also learned that by clinging to Jesus, I have learned to see the value in every person I talk to. And there are going to
Yeah.
be moments of uncomfortability when I'm calling people again, when I'm doing my usual, like calling them towards King Jesus, but I first start off with like, I say like, for me, it starts off with the absolute value of a person they are. And so then I can then humble, like, then it's like, it's just like, I just want to learn, like, teach me what, because like, even, even looking, and then it could be a whole bunch of assumptions because of what someone's culture is. But the moment you talk to someone in their personal story, which I'll even say that about white people, like, we, we are trained, like, I'll say, like, not we, but I have seen many times, and even I was in this camp where I'll see like your conservative white Christian, and not a bunch of assumptions will happen. That
Mhm.
it was like, oh, going to War Pacific, like it's like you're reared towards, and I don't know if it is right now, if it is like that now, but very much identity politics was the height of Christian liberal identity politics was the height of the time when I went there, and so. But the moment that like you talk to an old person, you talk to this person, talk to this person, like and you hear their stories, and then like you learn just empathy. And I think like I learned empathy, and I learned that by like when Jesus says by not judging, by the spec and log, like I have to check myself before I go try checking someone else, before I try to like call someone out. Like it's just like that constant, that, in which it sounds like it came natural for you, is that from what I'm hearing from you, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, like it was that cycle of empathy, which like once that cycle of empathy is just running ingrained in in the system, it becomes a lot more natural. But I'll say like,
I think there's something you hit on like earlier. If I could jump in for a
yeah,
second, um, I guess you started talking about is like who I am as a white male,
mm-hmm,
and the reality that for the majority of our culture, I have been a space has been carved out for me as belonging. I always see myself represented. I always see myself um, in places of privilege and in power. Um, I see myself in a lot of places that helps me feel like I belong. And then if I'm put into a situation where I don't belong, or I'm not um, the cultural norm,
mm-hmm,
I think understanding that you're going to have a situation like that and asking the question, I wonder how I'm going to feel in that circumstance. Um, what emotions, what's being confronted in me in that situation? Um, I think it's a really good question to ask yourself, so you're not ignorant to those emotions when they hit you,
Mm-hmm.
because it's culture shock.
Yeah.
You're not the cultural norm that people are catering to in that moment,
Yeah.
or it's like, so when, and as a man, when faced with things that are uncomfortable for me, when what's been trained for me is to respond with most likely an anger or violence or frustration, um, if that's my default response, I'm probably going to have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's why, like, for me, I just call it cultural exceptionalism, because every culture will have a dominant culture. Any nation you go to will have a dominant culture, where most of the media, literature, the writing, the hero stories is presented with that culture. Um, and so yeah, for me, it's like, once I, like, especially that, how I phrase it, like, Jesus was the most privileged one who laid down his privilege for the other. Once I make that my hero story, it does not, like, in any, like, especially, like, 'cause I've been in a lot of places where I am the minority. Um, Going overseas, working at a Vietnamese church for 3 years.
Mhm.
Like, at the time when I was at the Vietnamese church, I didn't know, I had an absolute hard time because I just did not have, I didn't know what I know now, because that was before I unraveled my cultural exceptionalism. I was, I yeah. There's a lot of this unhealthy mistakes I made, because yeah, I just didn't, noticing that, especially that hero story of the unprivileged king. I mean, the most privileged king deprivileging himself for the other. That was never taught to me growing up within that language, and that was then not modeled.
It was more like, um, divinely conquer. We're more than conquerors kind of
I
thing.
mean, like, especially the hero models, or like through the spirit, like, I'll become, like, if I get A, B, and C right, like, I'm gonna have a great successful, like no matter what, there's a formula to victory.
Right.
I like, actually, one of my favorite artists is John Greer. I think I've seen that. Did I say his name right? Have you heard
I'm
of
not
him?
familiar.
Oh, John Guerra, JONGUERRA. Dude, you'll
Pull them up.
do it. He's like in the camp that I find myself, where you just cling to Jesus in the midst of all the injustice that happens. The Keeper of Day album, Citizen. Oh man, it has made me cry multiple times, especially because that came out when I was just in that space of just clinging to Jesus and just seeing all the injustice, and it actually helped me, like, through that wrestling has gave me a lot of the vocabulary in the wrestling that I have now, like the depleting privilege Jesus. Like, I haven't heard that from anyone else, but that's something that's like one of those realizations I had. It's one of the things that I'll say over and over again. But yeah, I highly recommend him.
Very cool. Yeah, think about talking about like going into cultures that, like, you don't know how you will be perceived necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Kyle and Nina and how, and I'm not going to say anything specific
Uh-huh.
about them because we're streaming. Um, but the they were perceived when the pandemic hit
Yeah.
to leave.
Yeah.
That was the cultural expectation of white missionaries.
Yeah.
Um, and then they didn't,
Hmm.
and it deeply impacted the people that were around them.
Yeah. It
Um,
didn't jump ship when things got tough.
yeah, and I think that's a good example of we don't know the cultural baggage we
Yeah.
carry with us based upon nothing that we've done,
Yeah.
but because of actions of others
Yeah. And
who may look like us.
I'll say that's a kind of like, I will say, again, it's my, I guess my, just like how much we value comfort in the moment I say we, I'll just say from what I know, it's like I value comfort, and I'll say like, and I say everyone, but like like the West especially. I think everything all around us, even the commercials, do as much as we can to limit pain to have the most pleasure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like missionaries back in the day, like especially if you're going to a missionary to Africa, you literally will go to Africa with a casket as your luggage, because the assumption was you're probably not going to get back. You're probably going to get really sick and die. And it's really interesting. Is it's a more of a modern phenomena than the ancient one, unless you're like high up or the bishop, or you have royalty family who paid the church lots of money to have you be a cardinal, whatever. But being like the common monk or priest or a missionary, the assumption was suffering. Like you're going to go and probably die, especially like in ancient. And there's still a lot of that, especially when people go to the persecuted places. But places like Thailand, yeah, places like where a lot of missionaries go, where it's a place of also perceived comfort. It's it takes. I imagine it'll take work to unravel. I mean, like, yeah, it's a story of beautiful long suffering, and that's a testimony to people who are suffering because of poverty. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. But yeah,
I appreciate your circuitous thoughts.
yeah.
Most of the time, I can follow them.
That's the best thing anyone's ever said. Most of the time, I could follow them.
No, I like you think often in metaphor and in imagery that I don't think um a lot of people voice out loud. Um so it can seem sometimes convoluted.
Hmm.
Um but I like how you churn. I don't know, I feel like your mind is a little bit like a millstone as it's like grinding your thoughts. You're like sifting them. You're finding out what you like want to say.
Oh, thank you.
And that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's weird. I have always, I just always thought, I always think like, give me an idea and I will just always imagine it. Like,
Yeah.
um, like say something is true, then I'll try to imagine. I guess it's almost a Unitarian to me. I always imagine how would that practically work universally, and then I imagine like if everyone was doing that, or
Hmm.
Or like when I hear stories, and that's why I love history, because when you study history, it's like you're imagining the past. Imagination is just a crazy fun thing because you're always imagining with the images you know. You're never going to imagine how it is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think very pictorially.
I think with ADHD, there's like ADHD people with ADHD do a really good job at non-linear thinking, where we find connections where, like, I just saw a guy. He was talking about as someone without ADHD talking to his friend who has ADHD. His friend will make a leap from one conversation to the next, but he won't see how his friend connected those two, and so it kind of leaves him a little bit in the dust.
Hmm.
And so he'll ask his friend and say like, "Hey, do you mind going back in a second and like explaining how you got from this thought to this thought?" And he's like, "It's always amazing.
Hmm.
Like I always love it. But I just don't see it as someone until he explains it to me." Um, and then I feel like Nicole and I have been joking recently that with ADHD, every thought comes with like two additional thoughts that explain the thought. And for
Yeah.
me, it's highly emotional, where I'm like, well, if I want to really convey the emotion behind this thing, I need to explain it with this backstory.
Yeah.
And then there's like another Peter in me saying, and this backstory, and then another Peter being like, and this backstory too. Don't forget that. And so I'm like trying to weave in these other multiple backstories to properly convey the amount of emotion that's being held by the statement I'm about to say.
Yeah.
But by the time I make the statement, oftentimes I feel like people are not sure where I was going or where I've been.
Yeah.
Uh,
So this is what a beautiful friendship this is. Right here in this, Brandon used to always like Corey. He'll ask me a question, and he just wants me to give him a yes or no. But it's like I will give him an answer and then explain a full detailed story of why that's my answer.
you got to know the reason why.
He's like, I want to know the
Just
reason
not.
why. Of course you should know the reason why.
Yeah. Do you also have a fear of being misunderstood?
In the past, like I think it's yes, but it's also something by the grace of Christ. It's like it has gotten more open hand in my relationships. That makes sense. Like I've been able to work out a lot of that fear, but yes, I still like default fear. Yes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
just because I have something, like just because like I don't, just because I default into something, I don't ever, and I'm not saying this is you, this is me, like this is what I firmly believe. I don't ever want it to be excuse for toxic behavior. Or like an excuse to not try to better myself. And so something like that, I have worked up and down. I still work on it. There's times where like literally Robin is in bed right now, but there's been so many times that like we could step away from a dinner party, we could step away from any engagement. And I was like, do you think they're annoyed at me? Like, do you think I will, my brain will start overthinking that like I thought it was a great time, but maybe they misunderstood me saying this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I think part of the reason why I explain I find myself explaining as much as I do is because I'm worried that people will misunderstand me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I totally know what you mean about like not letting like, oh well, that's just who I am. I'm just
Yeah.
always worried that people are gonna be mad at me or that I'll be like misunderstood.
Yeah.
It's like that's really good work
Yeah.
to like start. Yeah, it's
Continue.
hard work.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking about like what does it look like to I mean like I think begin to trust people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the safety of that is like engaging with people who genuinely care about you
Yeah.
and like care to listen to you and people who are going to ask you, "Hey, how did you get from that thought to that thought?"
Uh-huh.
It's I think that's a good example of people who don't um have the same brain as you, who maybe don't relate but still care about you.
Yeah.
And it's like I know like for me Nicole has been such a safe person over the last 6.5 years of us being married that it's
Mm.
like I like being able to I know both of us kind of stepping away from like where we grew up and being able to just like engage with one another and just grow together
Yeah.
and be like vulnerable and like be known.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I think Nicole when we first started dating was one of the first people that I could be myself around and be silly and goofy and it wasn't cannon fodder for
Yeah.
her to think less of me.
Yeah.
She never thought less of me, no matter how like silly I was. And
What?
that was a safety that I really never known because it's as soon as I was silly to people around me, I would just be labeled as silly and nothing I had to say would be of any substance or worth.
Sorry.
I
That's rough.
couldn't be. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I'd be exaggerating a bit too.
Okay.
Um, so, but it's just like you just play the fool.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I enjoy making people laugh.
Yeah. Start doing
Um,
play theater.
yeah, but to be like to have those guards down to like walk in safety where you like where you don't have to ask the question, "Hey, are they annoyed at me?"
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's yeah. So I mean, I want you to know, like by default, I don't think I've ever been annoyed at you. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I definitely want you to know that you can feel that safety.
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah,
Yeah. If I feel it, I have learned to ask them. Um, that was just
yeah,
that helped a lot to unravel. Because I think that's what Robin was like. Just go, like, just, and then like therapy was like, yeah, go ask them, like,
yeah.
and I found that to be like the first step. I guess a really good first step. And also just through psychoanalyzing and
Through
psychoanalysis,
psychoanalysis, or
and
by you
analyzing,
psychoanalyzing.
psychoanalyzing myself and the people around me. I've also come to terms that I only think as much about myself, and everyone else is thinking as much about themselves. No one's thinking about me as much as I'm thinking about me.
That's
Um,
probably true. Yeah, that's a good point.
and so there's a lot of like you're seeing like a lot of these moments of these realization moments I also so like I told you part of my story about like the
Mhm.
abuse at home and my mom's autism. Like my mom's my relationship is 1,000 times better. Um, but because it's that's one thing. That's why I love like what helped a lot also to make sense of my growing up experience. Actually, the Garden of Eden narrative of how
Mm.
humanity, because Adam, I'm going to explain a little bit. Adam, you probably know this, but with Adam being human in Hebrew humanity, like and Eve being life, like they took Saul was like and sees like there's many times that I was taken for abusive self like
Mm.
because they saw what was right in their eyes.
Mm.
And so with that realization, all the traumas that I've been through, that also then that also becomes analyzing myself, and
Yeah.
especially with these defaults, kind of like these default responses I have to things, and also like it helps me like when like if when we go and then into like how people have X, Y, and Z, like like sexual identifications, all that kind of stuff. Just because I have this default response to something does I'll say like I was I like go towards more towards seizing, because there's always that tree of life on that narrative. There's always a tree of life. Like I gotta look for that tree of life, and I gotta call people that tree of life before like any time that I want to say this is me. And it's an interesting thing about self-identification is I found that the moment that I really just dig into my self-identification and saying that's
Mm-hmm.
me, for it almost for me, and I'm not going to for me it can easily become an excuse wagon instead of just seizing the truth and then living my life in that like living my life in the truth of who I'm going to say, the king who I'm going to say. And so that's a moment where my spirit, like what I truly believe about the spiritual side, like really does impact on how I engage my daily ADHD. Like what I believe about King Jesus and what the narrative of Scripture is not just a cerebral just belief. It very much goes
Mm-hmm.
into even how I engage these defaults that I have. And then also my lived experience as in like someone's been through a lot, like just the evils of people defining good and bad in their own eyes. Like, and that's actually one of the interesting thing about going to Warner Pacific, like being in these liberal settings, is I also saw the common pattern of defining good and bad in their own eyes, while also saying that other people, the way they're defining good and bad in their eyes is wrong. Well, while I'm doing the same thing, like it was so like just sinking sand to me that I could never. It like
Yeah.
it set my ADHD up to 11 because I just until like I saw that beautiful narrative of I need to find truth and seize it. I felt like I was constantly just up and down and trying to like it was a very chaotic water time for me.
I'm sorry, it was so crazy.
Yeah, it was just yeah. And I think that's also why like in these conversations I always keep pointing towards what I'm always pointing towards too, because these are the truths that help me get out of the chaotic storm that was my thinking, belief, and I'll say like Like right now, like I truly do believe that even if if the Lord wills it, I lose everything, even lose my like life or lose my family, lose all this, like someone scandalously say like bring like throw shame at me and all and like something is not true, but everyone believes in, and thus like I'm a wandering vagabond, like like I feel like I still feel like I am having a better life now than I was a couple years ago, which
It's
is
amazing.
weird. It's
That's great.
but yeah, and yeah, and that's why like I keep pulling the conversation towards because it's like that's where life started for me. And like really making sense on these political sphere conversations, these theological political spheres, these LGBTQ plus sphere conversation, like all these things that are so hot and heavy today to talk about.
Mhm.
Weird,
Yeah.
I said hot and heavy. That sounds like something else, but very charged.
Intense conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
intense, charged conversations. It's very hot and heavy.
There's a lot of baggage behind it.
Yeah, yeah, and one thing, yeah, going. That's why, like,
I have about 5 more minutes, by the way.
yeah, that's one thing I do like, and I always keep bagging about my college years. But my college years is very formative. I've learned that even once I got to the story and got to meet the people, and like I find that that's one thing I love about what you're doing right now, like how community focused you are. Like even though like you're in this warring period of like wrestling out ideas. Because when I was in my warring period, I used to just project my political, theological ideas as out loud in bombastic ways. That's really what identity politics. That's how it was then. You just project, fight. That was, I'll say, like for me, I like produce a lot of this unhealthy behavior. So I do love how you're still like here in culture, not here in community, not releasing yourself from community. And actually, what's really cool, my as had this thought was really cool is, actually everyone like all everyone remembers of Nietzsche is how he like said that God's not dead, that part, but actually he does talk about how like is a thing about religious practices, they create kind of uniformity to a person and culture. Like he recognized that. And he said like, actually like it makes people go crazy. Actually a culture go crazy the moment that is removed. Because they're going to start then finding other practices to fill in those religious practices.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moment that you're saying that it's like like how you still have delight in worship and in prayer, it really made me think of that. Even though at this moment you have shared that right now you don't believe that there's a God out there, or no. I don't know if it's believe or no. Are you leaning more towards agnostic or more atheist? Just don't in the don't know space or don't believe space?
I would definitely say more atheist than agnostic. It's like kind of all or nothing.
Yeah. Do you need help, Brendan? Oh. All right. Well, I love you, Peter. I'm gonna go.
Thank you, man.
It
You
was
guys have a good night.
Yeah, it was a delight pausing on our TMT runs and experiences, and
Yeah.
to have this. I felt like I got to know you more.
I feel like I got to know you more too, and I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
You guys have a good night.
You have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Hey, Corey.
What's up, Ethan?
What's the name of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game you guys are gonna play?
It's called Splintered Fates. So that one you will have to get to join us.
Yes.
All right. Give
I'm
me
gonna-
give me one
Oh.
give me 1 second. I'm going to try to help Brendan with his computer.
Okay.
Luckily, you got it right
Hello.
Hello.
Or hold on. Okay. I had to change some of the your settings.
So, I think we have a Path of Exile 2 characters.